Hey, everybody, and welcome back to For the Booze.
For the Booze.
That's
we
right.
are back.
We are.
Another week. I was going to wear my Gators hoodie today because of the topic of discussion.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
It's kind of a rival place we'll be visiting today for us Floridians.
For football, yes.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of I do know what this is. I'd never really considered doing an episode on it, and I kind of came across it by chance.
Okay.
I saw it in another video, not a reactionary video. It was something else. But we're going to travel to a town I'm sure you've never heard of, because I never heard of it, and it's called Northport, Alabama.
Northport? It sounds like it should be in the Northeast.
It's not.
It's like
Alabama.
New England area.
It's in Alabama. However, looking up the information about this location was honestly kind of hard because it has its own name, but it's referred to as another name that is also connected to another hospital.
That's a lot.
So today we're going to be talking about a place called the Jemison Center. It's also known as Old Bryce Hospital. And now there is a Bryce Hospital over in Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
But this one has been forgotten, and for a good reason.
That's very interesting.
We're going to find out why it's been forgotten. This topic it's insane. Because we've covered stuff like this before.
Yeah.
But this is different. It's in the South. Let's just remember that. And let's all remember in our hearts that Alabama's different now.
And Alabama?
It's different now.
It is. But I also wanted to say something before we get into the story.
Then say it.
For those listening on podcast, if you have ever wondered what these places that we talk about look like, what the people that we talk about look like, especially like pictures from the 1800s or the 1900s and things like that, now we do our podcast on YouTube form. So you can always go and watch the video form, and we include pictures of everything that we're talking about.
Well, that I'm able to find. That I'm able to find.
But
Some
anything that we can find that is related to what we're talking about, pictures of people, places, like all that. Go over to YouTube, check out our videos, and we put it all in there for you. Yeah, it's all in one.
The last one we did on Vulture City, Ghost Town, and Goldmine, I found a lot of stuff.
Oh man, those pictures were so cool.
Yeah, they're neat because it gives you a glimpse into the topic, right? It's just another medium. So if you can, come check us out on YouTube. We are there now.
We are.
So much editing. So much editing.
Double and triple the editing.
We're working on video quality too.
Yes.
Currently, at the moment, actually, you have to let us know if this looks any better because we're trying something different.
Keep running little tests to see, what works best because we're new to this. So,
Well, what do you say we get into this one?
I am ready.
All right. This one's going to probably infuriate you a little bit on the way.
Okay.
This is the Jemison Center. And the old Jemison Center, also known as Old Bryce Hospital in Northport, Alabama, was named in honor of Robert Jemison Jr., a prominent Alabama business magnate, politician, and staunch advocate for mental health. Sort of. He was educated at Mount Zion Academy, where he was a classmate of future Senator Dixon Hall Lewis. He attended the University of Georgia. His father was a slaveholder and landowner of at least 4 large-scale properties. To differentiate himself from his grandfather, who was also named Robert Jemison Jr. adopted the suffix Jr. We have that in common.
Yes, you do.
In 1826, he relocated with his father's family to Pickens County, Alabama, where he became a planter until 1836 and moved to Tuscaloosa.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I was right.
Now, Jemison served in the Alabama State Legislative between 1840 and 1851, initially in the Senate and then the House. And he returned to the Senate from 1851 to 1863. In 1861, he opposed secession as a convention delegate. Now, he was unanimously elected president of Alabama Senate in 1863. Soon after, Jemison joined the Confederate States Senate, succeeding William Lowndes Yancey, who had died of kidney disease. What a miserable death.
Oh, man.
That sounds
Could you
awful.
imagine
No.
that? And especially like
Back then.
before medical care that we
man.
have now, that would be awful.
Terrible. How do you fix that back then? Actually, now that I think about it.
You don't. They're just like, here's something that might help your pain. Good luck.
I don't even know what to say about that, honestly. Thinking about that's like sending a chill up my spine. Now, Jemison would go on to own multiple businesses, including a stagecoach line, toll roads, toll bridges, grist mills, sawmills, turnpikes, stables, a hotel, and plank roads. No idea what a plank road is. It'll probably be in the video.
Wow. So he owned half of everything.
He was
That's a lot.
a true business magnate.
Yeah.
Now, his primary source of capital, though, was 6 plantations he owned in western Alabama, totaling 10,000 acres, the largest of which was the 4,000-acre Cherokee Place plantation in what is now Northport, Alabama.
I'll just take one of those. Just one,
I
please.
don't want plantations.
Why?
Because of the stuff that happens on plantations.
Well, I know that like then, but like now, I would love a 4,000-acre place. That would be fantastic. Are you kidding me?
The history there, though, is...
Yeah, I know.
They're not very good. And it's
Not
in
at all.
Alabama. We're in the Deep South.
Yeah.
Alabama, 1860s.
Deep South.
Now, he had inherited the plantation from his father, which was then known as Crabapple. Before building the Jemison Van de Graaf mansion in Tuscaloosa, he lived at Cherokee Place. Now, this mansion could be a whole nother episode.
Oh.
So come back next week for part 2.
No way.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, the name Cherokee came from a family tradition of Jemison's wife, Priscilla Cherokee Taylor. Her family's history shows that her parents befriended the local Cherokee when Priscilla's mother nursed the chief's daughter back to health after tribal medicine failed. Now, the chief returned the favor by taking the Taylors into his village when the Choctaws went on a rampage. The grateful Taylor family asked the chief how they could thank him for saving their lives, and he replied by naming their first daughter Cherokee. Now, their daughter was already baptized as Elizabeth, so they named her Priscilla Cherokee when their second daughter was born in 1812. Robert and Priscilla had one daughter together, Cherokee Mims. Jemison also renamed the Crabapple Plantation to Cherokee Place. And after her father's death, Cherokee Mims inherited the large plantation and, in turn, donated the land to Bryce Hospital around the turn of the century.
Wow.
So Elizabeth's parents weren't able to already name the named child that. So the daughter, I guess, in respects, she paid the respects to the Cherokee tribe and named her daughter Cherokee.
That's actually pretty cool.
And then named the whole area. They named the whole area Cherokee Place.
Mm-hmm. That's super neat. I like that.
Now, the Jemison Center, named after Robert Jemison Jr., is located on what was originally Cherokee Plantation. It's often wrongly referred to as Old Bryce. In 1900, the Alabama legislature established a mental health facility in Mount Vernon, Alabama, to relieve overcrowding at Bryce Hospital. For some reason, over the years, people associated this hospital with Bryce Hospital and started referring to it as Old Bryce Hospital, but it's not.
So they're two totally separate places.
They are two totally, but they are connected.
What?
They are connected.
It's so confusing.
It is very confusing. Try researching all
Right.
this. They are connected in a kind of a dark way.
Oh. Okay.
You'll see. It's not good.
I don't know if I want to now.
It's not good. Now, this hospital became known as the Mount Vernon Hospital for the Colored Insane, since it served African Americans exclusively until 1969, when it was desegregated following the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So we are talking about a all-black hospital during segregation. It's bad. I don't know why I always find these bad stories.
Because it's the kind of stuff we talk about.
And
it always goes back to when those things happen.
As proud as I am to be an American, American history
is awful.
We have a period of American history that just sucks.
It's so terrible.
It is so bad. Now, by the 1920s, Bryce Hospital was severely overcrowded again. Now, to further help relieve overcrowding at Bryce, the former plantation house at Cherokee Place was demolished, and in its place, a 3-story neoclassical brick institution was constructed. Now, before the Jemison Center was built, African-American patients were sent 100 miles away to Searcy Hospital, which from 1902 until 1939 was the only state facility serving African-American patients, which is so infuriating because why can't they I understand, I know how history works, I get what happened, but why can't we just help people?
As people, no matter what?
It's so frustrating.
I get it.
People back then, I'm sorry, but people back then were stupid.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Peter Bryce, superintendent of Bryce Hospital, believed that idle hands allowed mental patients too much time to focus on their condition. He pragmatically recognized patient labor as essential to the hospital's economic survival in the face of diminishing state funds. So, put them to work.
Yeah. I mean,
not a good idea.
I mean, I can kind of
me,
see it. Like,
you're going to eat those words.
I get it.
You're going to eat those words.
I'm sure I will. However, like if you're treating someone and you just stick them in a room and have them do absolutely nothing.
By that standard.
That's my point.
And to be fair, at the time, Dr. Bryce is not referencing the African-American patients.
Okay.
But
that's what I'm saying. Like get them out, get them moving, instead of like just shoving them in a room.
He is talking about the patients in general, all of them.
Okay.
Now, he also demanded that patients be treated with courtesy, kindness, and respect at all times. Work programs and other activities, including farming, sewing, maintenance, and crafts, were encouraged. Now, patients housed at the Jemison Center would also adopt this philosophy and tend to the fields around the property. Now, this was a part of the self-sustainability of Bryce, as well as a way to feed a large number of patients with limited state funding. State funding was almost non-existent. And this was kind of how they kept everybody fed. But if there's one thing troubling to me about this story, and it's that you're in Alabama, back in the turn of the century, at an all-black hospital, and you're sticking them in the fields all day.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
How do you think they were treated?
Pretty terribly. And
not good. They were not treated good. And the story, honestly, it just gets worse. I mean, we're not going to look, this is safe for YouTube. We do talk about dark stuff on the show, but I will not go into detail about certain things. And this is one of those things. And there are words and phrases and names that I left out because I don't even feel comfortable saying them, even in a educational way. It's not right. Now, Dr. William D. Partlow was a physician at Bryce Hospital, and he was appointed assistant superintendent of the facility. He held this position until his election in 1919 as the successor to Dr. James T. Searcy. Now, Partlow, this guy's an interesting character, was a strong believer in Dr. Bryce's teachings, writing such papers as Value of Employment and its Relation to Nervous and Mental Diseases, and Medicine and Sociology, their relation in the past and present. Now, he transferred this belief system to the Jemison Center, operating the asylum as a state work farm, where able-bodied African-American patients would work in the fields to produce food for the hospital, as well as perform all kinds of other labor, such as weaving, mending, etc. Slave work. Now, Partlow was also a eugenicist, and he had the power to sterilize any patients without consent. In 1934, he proposed a bill that would allow for sterilizations of every patient upon release, something he was already doing, as well as forming boards of doctors that would design groups to be sterilized.
Oh, my God. So before he was even proposed a bill to do
he was already
like
this
on his way.
This was his thing.
Through a bunch of people.
This was his thing.
Oh, my God.
Now, the bill passed both houses of the Alabama state legislature, but was vetoed by Governor Bibb Graves. Good for you, Bibb.
Good job.
Partlow continued sterilizing patients until around 1945, when the tide was turning against eugenics due to the association with Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
This isn't the only thing he was into, by the way. I don't believe I just kind of locked it up here for you guys, but he was also very much into lobotomies and stuff like that.
I mean, I feel like sorry, that threw me way off.
It's bad. It is
so
bad. It's really bad.
But we cover a lot of hospitals and things like that. And I feel like the lobotomies just kind of go along with the times at almost every hospital.
Lobotomies were considered like
a medical treatment.
A go-to method at one point in time.
And they were a medical treatment.
They were a medical treatment, yeah.
But
people alive
sterilization,
today, there are people alive today who had lobotomies.
Right. And it's unfortunate and cruel, but it was the times.
Yeah.
Now, sterilization, absolutely not. Absolutely
I mean, by
not.
your own logic, though, it was a treatment.
Oh, God.
In all, 224 people were sterilized in Alabama, and it can be assumed that patients at the Jemison Center were also subjected to sterilization. That's just what they think. There could have been hundreds more. However, by the 1960s, the concept of patients remaining in the hospital for long periods of time, while at the same time working productively, became a subject of public concern. Many citizens felt that the hospital retained patients as a source of free labor. Now, Alabama at the time ranked last among U.S. states in funding for mental health. Bryce Hospital at the time had 5,200 patients living in conditions that Montgomery Advisor reporter Hal Martine likened the conditions at the asylum to Nazi concentration camps, mentioning his experiences covering war crime trials after World War II.
So he knows. He knows what this stuff looks like.
And he says it's as bad as a concentration camp.
Oh, my God.
We're going to find out how bad it was. In 1970, the Jemison Center made headlines after a journalist from the Tuscaloosa News visited the facility and reported on the abhorrent conditions. Quote, human feces were caked on the toilets and walls. Urine-soaked, aging floors. Many beds lacked linens. Patients were sleeping on the floor. Archaic shower stalls had cracked and spewing shower heads. One tiny shower served 131 male patients. The 75 female patients only had one shower also. Most of the patients at Jemison were highly tranquilized and appeared to have not bathed in days. All appeared to lack any semblance of treatment, and the stench was almost unbearable, end quote. And that was life at the Jemison Center.
That is disgusting.
And then they just shoved him off in the fields all day long. 100 Bryce employees, including 20 professional staff, were laid off. University of Alabama's Department of Psychology members sought to file a suit on behalf of the laid-off workers. Nevertheless, federal judge Frank M. Johnson determined that the courts lacked the authority to intervene for terminated staff. However, he did acknowledge the potential for a lawsuit advocating for patients whose quality of care had been impacted. In October 1970, Ricky Wyatt, a 15-year-old who had always been labeled a, quote, juvenile delinquent and housed at Bryce despite not being diagnosed with a mental illness, became the named plaintiff in a class action lawsuit. One of the employees laid off was his aunt, Mildred Hunter Rawlings, and together they testified about intolerable conditions and treatments designed only to make the patients more manageable. The plaintiff class was expanded in 1971 to include patients at other asylums, including Searcy Hospital, Partlow State School, and, of course, the Jemison Center.
Well, good. At least they started getting it out there and making...
In 1970, well, here's the next line. After 33 years, the case was finally dismissed on December 5th, 2003, with the findings by Judge Myron H. Thompson that Alabama complied with the agreement. The standards elaborate in that agreement had served as a model nationwide, known as the Wyatt Standards. Now, they are founded on 4 criteria for evaluation of care: human, psychological, and physical environment, qualified and sufficient staff for the administration of treatment, individualized treatment plans, and minimum restrictions of patients' freedoms. Now, this became the longest mental health case in national history. The state of Alabama estimates its litigation expenses at over $15 million.
Oh, my God.
33 years.
That's a lot.
Now, since its closure in 1977, the decaying building, once known as the Jemison Center, has inspired hundreds of ghost stories and legends throughout the years. Although people have ventured out there for decades, police and local neighborhood watch patrol the area, looking for any trespassers.
So people do try to go here to...
People do go here.
Okay.
There are videos online of people in the building.
Wow.
You're not going to be able to see them now, obviously, but watching on YouTube, I'm going to post pictures of what this building looks like, and it is a very old neoclassical hospital design. It's kind of framed by trees. It is out in it's just in the woods, and it is just crumbling. It looks like, I don't know, Roman ruins being engulfed by nature.
Wow.
It is one of the creepiest looking buildings that we've talked about.
I bet that is very ominous looking.
And apparently, from one of the stories we're going to hear later, like, you have to like park, like, I think at a church, and then you have to walk down these dark trails
Ooh.
to get to it, and then it opens up into a big field, and then you see the hospital face, and it's like lined with trees and all overgrown.
Wow. Do you remember that thing that came out? It was like a Life After People or something like that?
Yeah.
Where like it was like auto-generated, like
It's very cool.
of
I loved
nature
it.
taking over buildings. That's what I fully envision when you say that. And I think, honestly, it looks really cool. But if you're going there to ghost hunt, I think it makes it a lot creepier.
It's really cool looking. It's super cool looking.
Yeah.
But I would automatically assume it's haunted. Automatically.
Just by looking at it.
Just by looking at it. Now,
Yeah.
another thing I want to bring up about this story, and I read this in multiple different articles and stuff. I'm not the only one. Alabama has kind of swept this story under the rug. It is incredibly hard to find information about this place.
Why?
Because it's tied to segregation
Well,
and how long it took for them to get away from that.
okay, but I mean, it's history.
But do you want to be known for one of the worst things and lasting the longest?
No, and I get that, but maybe you should have thought about that.
And there wasn't a lot of good record keeping at the time, because at the time, these patients were considered less than. And I didn't go into great detail about specific stories, but they were slaves. They were treated like slaves. They were mistreated and beat and over-medicated, and they were worked like to damn near death. Like, this was, they basically, because they became mentally ill and they were black people, they were sold into slavery.
It's so bad. So bad.
And
I can't.
the state of Alabama doesn't want to be tied to that.
Yeah, I bet. But you did it.
Look, Alabama's different now. Clearly, it's 2024.
Well, yeah.
So we're not throwing any salt on Alabama. Like, each state has their own special kind of dark history.
And I feel like not just Alabama, but the South in general at that time.
Yeah, the South is...
They hung on to that for a little too long. Like, a lot too long, but you know what I mean.
The South is a special place.
Ding,
Well,
ding,
and we're
ding,
talking
ding,
about we're talking about the deep South.
No, I know.
This isn't like Virginia. Which arguably I would argue isn't the South. But
I would agree. Virginia is not the South.
it's just, I'm sorry.
It's not.
But we're talking about places like Alabama, and they did hold on to this. They fought for it. And it's awful. And the history is awful. I do wish there was more about this topic, but if you go out there and you find the articles that I got all this from, you will find that nobody can find information.
I mean,
to this.
what you gave, that was enough. That was enough.
There-
I don't know if I want to know more.
There's longer like stories for individuals like Dr. Cersei and like all those guys. They are the horrific doctors of those times that you think they are.
Yeah.
They did terrible things.
And I know you went in and you took out quite a bit. I know you were saying when you were doing the research.
There was stuff I wasn't comfortable saying.
And totally fair.
Yeah.
Totally fair. So if anybody has any interest in further reading into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Help yourself.
If you go down into the
That's all, folks.
what do you call that?
Description?
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
I always post where my sources come from, so you can go look this stuff up on your own if you want.
Yeah.
Same for podcast listeners, video, it doesn't matter. But as fun as this is, I think we're going to go ahead and we'll get into some spooky stuff. Arguably I think it's the more fun part.
Well, it's got to be more fun than what we just had.
Because of the lack of information, though, I do need to make a caveat here. This is the first time on this podcast where the real world accounts are going to fill the majority of this. I stopped. Wow. I could have wrote 50 pages of people visiting and having stories of this place.
That's so cool. Because sometimes it's hard
sometimes
to find
sometimes I can't find any.
Bare minimum of stuff.
This place has a ton.
Wow.
A ton. I mean, on one website alone, which is the majority of them come from, there was so many more.
That's crazy.
They just go on and on.
All right, I'm ready.
Now,
Let's do it.
For many, abandoned asylums and forgotten hospitals are some of the spookiest destinations imaginable. Empty hospitals are eerie on their own, but even more so when you consider that spirits of the departed could be lurking around any corner and haunting the hallway of the hospital they once called home. Hospitals and asylums are often considered hotspots for paranormal activity, since countless people pass in those facilities, oftentimes unexpectedly, which is one explanation for why many spirits still linger there, rather than crossing over. There's no denying that the Jemison Center was once a beautiful building. However, now that it's been abandoned for nearly 50 years, it's unrecognizable because it's covered in lots of plant growth and graffiti. It's also surrounded by lots of overgrown trees. Visitors say they have heard disembodied voices, footsteps, and slamming doors. Others claim to have had more violent experiences in which their hair was pulled or they felt as though they were being kicked. In an article on AL.com, I'm assuming Alabama.com, but it's just AL.com, April Moody is one of the brave few to venture inside the Jemison Center. Now, Moody has made the trip to the Jemison Center, or Old Bryce Hospital, 3 times and says she gets more courageous each time she goes. Quote, "It is by far the creepiest place I have ever been. And I've been to many scary places. I think it's the setting that really plays with your mind. It's so run down and old, plus the fact that it was a mental institution really brings a darkness and a sadness to the place. Although she's been there 3 times so far, Moody has only had one trip that made her believe that Old Bryce could actually be haunted. It was a trip she made with 3 other people after it had rained and added to the creepiness. Quote, "We turned off the lights from time to time to see if anything would happen. One time we did this, and my friend heard a noise. At the same time, I saw a movement in the lighting. Now we walked towards where I saw the movement, and we heard the sound. For some reason, the dirty floor was nice and cleaned off in that area. We saw a fresh footprint on the floor. We turned off the light again, and we both thought we heard a small child running towards us. We turned on the light and didn't see anything. I'm not really sure if any of the things were really paranormal activity, but the setting can really play with your mind. It's a lot of fun," unquote. Now, Josh Price has also visited Bryce and said, quote, "It would be creepier if not for all the graffiti and vandalism. The bats were pretty spooky, though," unquote. S.D. Allen Nursing Home is connected to Old Bryce, and some people also believe it has its own paranormal activity. That's another place we could probably do an episode on.
Okay, well, and we've done a place that had a nursing home as well, and
Asylum 40-something.
Asylum 41?
Something like that.
I think.
I'd have to go back and look.
And that brings its own kind of quests for paranormal activity.
Because
you know what I mean?
people do die there all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
You know,
all the time.
Old
and
age.
You hear like a lot of nursing homes or places that have elderly people and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of death.
Yeah.
So, I mean, connecting them with a mental asylum.
Yeah. And it makes it spooky.
Yeah.
Now, the Jemison building is inexplicably omitted from nearly all accessible written records regarding Bryce Hospital, and coincidentally, quote, "A review of state records on mental health in Alabama was most notable for a lack of reference to African Americans." So they notably left all of this out. Like they try to erase it from history.
Wrong. Can't do that.
Now, Alabama, of course, resisted the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and desegregation as long as it could. But eventually Bryce was desegregated, and the Jemison Center was closed possibly around 1977, which means we will never truly understand the deplorable things these people endured while being imprisoned here. For the first time ever, though, online accounts of real people visiting and having a spooky experience outweigh what we could find on this place. So let's see what some of those people have to say about what's happening there today.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm ready.
On the website, alabamahauntedhouses.com, someone wrote just a couple months ago, quote, "Last weekend, my son and his best friend wanted to go explore, so we walked through each floor of both wings. It had rained the night before, and it was difficult to distinguish the sounds of water dripping at times from anything that might be supernatural. An entire square section of the left wing third floor has indeed collapsed through the second floor, all the way down to the ground level, making the first floor left west wing difficult to safely access from inside except from the second floor stairwell. All the stairwells are a slip hazard due to the accumulation of terracotta ceiling tiles and debris scattered around. My son's friend swears he heard someone laughing soon after we first entered from the rear center access ramp. On 2 occasions, within a few seconds of each other, on the third floor, a dark shadow seemed to quickly move away from me briefly back into a room as I walked down the east wing hallway. Both occurrences happened just at the edge of my peripheral vision as I walked past a room and really gave me an unsettled feeling like we weren't alone. When I looked directly into the room, though, with a flashlight, nothing was there. This happened around sunset when darkness started creeping in and the natural light was fading, so we left at that point to briefly explore the S.D. Allen facility down the street." Unquote.
Wow. Well, we can relate to the out of the corner of your eye kind of things. That's what we experienced a lot in our old house. A lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That we may be starting to experience here.
On the same website in February of this year, someone wrote, quote, "We went just a month or so ago. We had so many events happen in just 2 short hours on the property. We started in the Jemison Center, and we heard several footsteps occur. At one point, it sounded like a man cleared his throat on the second floor east side." Just like that. Now, the west side had completely collapsed from the third floor all the way to the main floor. I guarantee that's the same section.
Yeah.
We also went to the nursing home side, and this is where it got rough. And we were just looking through rooms trying to get EVPs. Well, there was 4 to 6 rooms we would hear noises out of. We would go to one room and hear noises in a room behind us or adjacent to us. We felt as if we were going crazy. In one room that appeared to be an exam room due to the size and how it was set up, I got overwhelmed with emotion and sat down on the dirty floor feeling sad and angry. Once I stood up, I noticed the back of my neck was burning, and it had scratches down the base of my neck almost to my shoulder blades. It was burning and showed up red, and you could see the scratch marks. And then I was ready to go after being affected. As I'm walking out, I hear something run up behind me, and I felt someone, I'm assuming, trying to push me. I could feel the coldness on my back. This place is amazing for activity. If you go, please be prepared. Also, it is posted as no trespassing. So if cops catch you, then you could be fined or arrested. Happy hunting.
Happy hunting.
Happy hunting.
I like that. Super nice.
Don't get busted.
After, something definitely tried to push me and scratch the crap out of me. So happy hunting.
And no thanks. On Reddit.com, just 2 months ago, user Ryan CC wrote, "If you see this comment, do not, and I repeat, do not go to Bryce." Now, I had to make sure, but they are talking about Jemison.
Okay.
I've been there 2 times with my cousin and a buddy of mine, and there's a lot of stuff that happened in just 2 of those times. This is going to make sense later in the story. But when my aunt was about our age, she went to Bryce with 3 of her friends. And then there appeared 3 other people that walked out of the woods out of nowhere. And they said they can show them where all the craziest rooms are. I don't know how true this is or not, but they're said to be ghosts. Fast forward to the first time we go. My buddy brought a spirit radar with us to see if it says anything while we walked around. When we pull up, we park in a church parking lot. To get in the main part, you got to go to a big field, and there are dark trails surrounded by woods. We eventually make it to the Jemison Center. We start walking around and looking in rooms and at all the graffiti everywhere on the walls. Eventually, we saw a tiny bird come out of another room, and I kid you not, the bird literally starts flying over us wherever we went. Eventually, we turn a corner, and there's, quote, "The bird is the word," written on the wall. As soon as we looked at that and looked back, the bird was gone. None of us ever heard it fly away. Another part that will make sense, and I don't know if it's true, my buddies from school went here about 4 or 5 years ago and saw a mattress lit on fire by itself in the middle of a room. We walked down a hallway, and the radar randomly said, "Fire." And then right after, we turned into the first room in the hallway, and there was a half-burnt mattress on the floor. If that isn't a sign of it being haunted, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's a lot of coincidence there.
Oh, yeah. Now, eventually, when we were about to walk out of the building to go to the other building right next to the Jemison Center, the radar goes, "Please leave." So we ended up leaving and going home right after it said that.
Bye.
Fast forward a week later, and the three of us go back to Bryce to finish the other building, and we're walking down the path. We end up seeing a random group of 3 people. They came out of the woods, but we never heard leaves crunching, and they didn't have flashlights. One of them had a baseball bat, and I was immediately sketched out. And they said they can show us where all the best rooms are. So we explored the second building with them. Next thing you know, we went into a room, we came back out, and they were nowhere to be found. Never heard them leave or even saw flashlights.
They had ghost tour guides?
I mean...
What?
That's what they're claiming. You should have seen, honestly, the comment section for that was wild.
I'm sure.
People were lighting them up.
I'm sure. Everything is too pinpointed and exact. You know what I mean?
But hey, look, it's an experience.
I mean, if it happened, it happened.
I doubt it. While there was no shortage of stories, here's one more from AlabamaHauntedHouses.com, June of 2023. Quote, "The first time I went with my buddies, we were in a room and my friend said his chest started to hurt. Weird. He never has chest pains. Soon after he said that, we heard something heavy breathing and walking above us. As we started to leave, my buddy had chest pains again. We started to run and we turned around and saw a human-sized shadow figure behind us with eyes reflecting in the flashlights. We almost got to the car, and my friend has chest pains once more, and we all hear a little girl saying, 'Hi, come back.' And she sounded like she was in distress. The second time we went back, it wasn't as scary, but every time my buddy had chest pains, we would soon hear something being thrown seconds after, along with the feeling like we were being watched. It's not bad. There's a lot of accounts of shadow figures, and if you see videos online, you actually see them.
I think shadow figures are more common than anybody kind of really thinks, you know, like they're hard to catch on video and things like that. But like,
are they? Because if you go online, go to YouTube, where you're probably watching this, and look up Old Bryce, because I think that's what they're mostly labeled as.
Okay.
And people have a lot of run-ins with shadow figures and what we are going to assume are actual people, but we're not sure. Not sure.
Yeah.
Now, today, the Jemison Center is a charred ruin that is slowly being reclaimed by nature and visibly collapsing. The roof of the building has been consumed by fire with heavy damage on the upper levels. Most of the interior has no recognizable signs of its prior purpose and has been heavily vandalized, and it seems that it's slowly fading away from existence, much like the stories of those who were tortured and enslaved there years ago. And that's the story of the Jemison building.
Wow. I have very mixed emotions about this.
I do too, but it's because normally I can find an abundance of tales of a place. Just,
right.
You know, like online articles and spooky websites that all tell a story of a place being haunted. This is the first time ever that I barely found any of that, but the personal accounts there was so many. I could have just kept writing and finding
and that's
stories.
crazy too, because like we kind of dived into the TripAdvisor style type things, and they're harder to find than what you can find in articles most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
by a
it's
lot.
very interesting that this place just is so chock full of personal experiences as opposed to the article stuff.
There's an overwhelming amount of personal stories about this place.
Wow. That's super interesting.
Because it's a local legend place, and people go there all the time. They're not supposed to. I mean,
right.
you get in trouble if you go, but
most of these places are like that, though.
People go, though, and their videos on YouTube and, their stories are all online, and there's just an amazing amount of stories.
Wow.
I've never seen this before, but what's really important about all this...
The super important part?
This is very, very important.
Is it real?
We need to know whether or not you, of all people, think that this is real.
I do.
Or do you think this is real?
Oh, my God. I do. I do think this is real. I think the overabundance of personal experiences just kind of solidify that for me.
I mean, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah. And again, whether we do the land or the energy that's left behind from the history and all of that, I don't know. I think it's just this big collaboration of things that make this place haunted. So, yes.
True that.
What about you, babe?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think there is something haunting this place, and I don't know. I assume it's the hospital because of the treatment of the mentally ill. Mm-hmm. But the land also, there was a lot of Native American battles going on here.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There was death on this land before. There was mistreatment and death after. I could only imagine how scary it must be to already have mental issues, especially way back when, and then to be mistreated and tortured on top of it. Mm-hmm. That's a whole other layer to that 7-layer dip. Then, yeah,
7-layer dip is great.
So somehow, big old seal of approval.
That's right.
You guys will get to see this now. I don't know how I'm going to put this in here, but we'll figure it out.
All right.
And that is the Jemison Center or Old Bryce Hospital. I wish this could have been a longer episode. There just wasn't enough.
Hey, and you know what? It was enough for us to say it was haunted.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, and it's a very sad tale.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
the people there were just not treated well.
It's so unfortunate.
It bums me out because, like, I have friends in other countries. Mm-hmm. And I hate talking about, like, history with them, right? Because our history sucks. We have parts of our history. We have parts of our history that are rad. Like, I love the Old West and stuff. Like, I love stuff like that. It's all the other stuff that happened with it.
I know.
That makes it, I hate talking about it because it's,
it's awful. It's terrible.
I was born in 1980. I had a lot of black friends growing up. And I just couldn't imagine what this time period was like for people. It's crazy.
I know.
But that's the story of Jemison. We could go on and on and on. But where can they find us?
Well, they can find us on Instagram at @forthebooze_podcast and on Facebook at forthebooze.
You can also find us on X at forthebooze, right here on YouTube at forthebooze. You know where to find the rest of the videos. You can also find us on. I haven't really been keeping up with the TikTok. I'm probably going to need to, but we are on TikTok and just anywhere else you search for us, we're there. Don't forget also, if you have a listener suggestion or a personal story you'd like us to read, we'd still like those.
Yes, absolutely.
Send those in to. That's going to be our new thing, right?
Yeah.
As I go to say forthebooze12@gmail.com, you talk over me.
I really want listener stories, and I'm very passionate about it, okay?
forthebooze12@gmail.com. It'll be like right here. Go ahead and send it into there. Yeah, we can do that now. It's like right here. And there is one more very important thing that I cannot stress enough that we need to really make this happen. And there's other stuff past this, but it is 5 stars. Rate and review on iTunes especially, but anywhere you listen, it really does help. Doesn't seem like it does. I know it's a pain to do it, but it really helps. And the last thing, if you would like to join the ranks of our Patreons like Joe Madden and Teresa O'Donnell or Terry. I'm sorry, I don't know which one you want. Tell me on Patreon. And now Tina.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that last name. I don't even know if that is your last name, but it'll be at the end of this video.
Our new Patreon friend.
Right. So if you'd like to join them, ultimately through time, it's just going to make the show better because none of that money is for personal use. It's going to go to new camera, new computer.
We want to keep doing the show, and we want to keep making it better for you guys.
It's right. And we'd like to eventually get a point to where we have merchandise.
Yeah, and if you want to become a Patreon member, head over on to
For the Booze
on Patreon,
and we do the Booze everywhere.
We do an extra podcast on there.
That's
we
right.
do early releases of our regular podcast and all of that good stuff. So come over and check us out.
Yeah, because that's where we do the thing.
That's right.
This is going to be the end of this week. Go ahead and take us out, babe.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Stay out of the woods, kids.